Professor Ascheri is going to show us how we can even understand the history of Siena just by looking at some of the buildings. The history is in the stones themselves. Professore.
Yeah, because here really we are along the Francigena and where the most ancient buildings were along this road, and those are the walls of the city, and you see how many times they were rebuilt because of the war. So even here, all was made many times. Look at the windows, for instance, larger or narrow, and so on. Here there was a church before the Templars went here. There was already St. Peter's Church for this area of the city because of the pilgrims and of inhabitants of this area. And here, you see, is a very complicated architecture because was remade many times, and so it's difficult to say how could be in the past. But you see, of course, this late 13th century, those could be 12th century, you know? And here there is a proof that we are in the porcupine area and that the sponsor, the great lord of the porcupine was Count Chigi. You see the symbol of the Chigi, the Chigi family, and the motto of the porcupine, sol per difesa io pungo, only for defense.
Well, we'll ask your wife about that.
So, and this gives a good idea of Middle Ages. Really, you breathe Middle Ages here. In the church inside is even better.
And it's not just the Middle Ages here, but we have even the 20th century with the addition of the fountain for the Conchata baptism. So it's really a slice of Siena's history itself.
Yeah, but for baptism, remember that the only church was in the city was possible. The baptism was St. John's baptism. Yeah, only. Because it was specific for the baptism. So we have the list of people who got the baptism in St. John's. You see here, even here, you see, you can watch early 13th, late 13th century, everything here, and this is probably right because it was the house of Baldassarre Peruzzi. So the house of an architect should be complicated. And now we can enter St. Peter's again with many works after the first establishment of this is an additional church, an additional chapel put later.
So this church, we have about 1,000 years of history here in Siena along this Via Francigena, this Pilgrim's Road.
Sure. Here we can enter now.
I think so, yes. We'll go inside. Francesca is coming, and so this.
You see the proofs of the previous church. They worked a lot, always during the centuries, and we can see even inside. Here the chapel was added in the 15th century. Here, the chapel, you see. there are always mixed ancient and recent paintings or photos like San Giovanni Bosco. You see, that is a good piece, a really good piece. But this was added, new chapel. The original is here.
Of course, when we say new, for someone like me, an American, new is a very relative term. New for Sienese is different.
15th century, this is new. And you see, they tried to preserve some ancient frescoes. You see, it remembers a little San Cristoforo. San Cristoforo is again a very ancient church, many times with the works and with ancient frescoes.
And San Cristoforo, St. Christopher, that's also along the Via Francigena.
Exact. Right, San Cristoforo, where San Cristoforo was so close to the center of the city that the city council, when the public building was not ready, they met in San Cristoforo. Look how old are these paintings. Fragment are, look. Some can remember, Lorenzetti's school. Could be after the Black Death, when there was less money for the colors, the precious colors. And anyway,
What does this church say to you, Professor, about the history of Siena? We're standing on 1,000 years of history right now, and maybe for you, an Italian, it doesn't seem like much, but for me, I mean, it's rather incredible, but it must mean something to you as well.
This is a parish church now. So now is a church important for the people living here. Yeah, sure. We have close another church, important church, with incredible frescoes, is Fonte Giusta.
Yes.
Do you know Fonte Giusta is along the Francigena on the right,
Yes,
on the right side down, and their frescoes are well preserved because are of 15th century, early 16th, are new.
Very good. Excellent.
Of course, here with the Templars should be different, organized, because they had a monastery that was closed, were not a parish church, was another story with the Templars.
And the Templars, weren't they? They were in charge of helping to protect pilgrims along their way, to help protect even all the way to the Holy Sepulchre, or was that the Knights of Malta and San Giovanni?
First of all, they had to host their colleagues who were traveling to Terra Santa, to Jerusalem for the crusade. They were first for the crusade. The first task was the crusade. And secondly, they, of course, they received the poor people, pilgrims, and so on. They had every monastery had always a small hospital to recover for pilgrims or other people. And so was very scattered, the organization. Santa Maria della Scala was exceptional, but the rule was the small hospital along the Francigena. In Via Montanini there were 4, 5 hospitals. It was very.
And when
very
we say
common.
hospital, we don't mean a hospital where you go when you break your leg, but a place for pilgrims to have shelter for the night?
Was, yeah, for hospitality, and could be present people caring for not only for poor people but even for with the sick and so on.
Okay, wow. So they served a huge
Yeah.
purpose, and that would you say that helped Siena become the important city that it was to become in the 1200s and the 1300s, because we had this influx of pilgrims, of knights, of important people, and then traders as well.
Yeah, and the was so close to Rome, so there was a strong relations. There were strong relations with Rome, and of course other important cities like Orvieto, Viterbo. So, and remember the 13th century is the century of the universities and the doctors. And for instance, we had this Aldobrandinus de Siena, who was an important doctor in France. He wrote a treatise on of medicine in French. Think of this, because it was a language at that time, was a learned language to have a good, with important universities, even France. But after that was the Latin became the mandatory language for scientific purposes. So theology, law, medicine should be in Latin. No problem.
We're talking about the 13th century here. It's really quite amazing that Siena has so much history in just a few. How many meters have we walked together? Not that many, but we've already gone through over 1,000 years. We've talked about wars between Florence and Siena, the fall of the Republic of Siena in 1555. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, I know. And then also this idea of pilgrims coming through here from the year 1000, pretty much. I mean, it's really quite incredible. So,
We have to walk a little more. Come on.
okay, so
Because
we'll
we
meet
have
you. Oh.
to stop along the Francigena in Porcupine again.
Okay. One more stop in the Porcupine. We'll see you in a few minutes as we wipe our brows. Okay.